Hello, my fellow foodpreneurs. Welcome to our 10th episode, totally crazy, of how to start a food business. And the next 3 episodes are all going to be about the first 3 questions I ask my clients. What do you make? How do you make it? Where do you get your supplies from? So today we're going to dive in depth for the next 15 minutes or so on what do you make? Okay, so I asked this question because what do you make is where everybody wants to start, and it's where we should start. I mean, we make food for a living, folks, right? And so what do you make is the place to start, because that's where we get all of that's where our brain goes, and that's how we start to think about how we're out there solving problems in the world. And of course, that's what we're here to do, folks. So if you want to solve problems in the world, just send me a direct message or go to www.sfbdi.com/onebigresult. And you can figure out how you are solving problems in the world. And your food has to solve problems in the world, okay? And this is how you start thinking, all right, about what you make, all right? Now, I know everybody wants to start with their recipe, and I totally get it. You have to get this right. But let me tell you, if you are trying to scale up a small production process into a large production process, you may need professional help on scaling up your recipe. This is a learned skill, okay? You can't just say, well, I'm super good at making 3 loaves of bread. I can make 30 loaves of bread a day. That's not how this works, okay? So there's tons of help out there for that. That is not something we do here at Durgo Food Safety and the Smallholder Food Business Development Institute, but you can get help for that. I would start with your local cooperative extension agent. Usually they know who to start with. There are commercial kitchens around you that can help you scale up your recipe, because of course, you're going to have to go find a place to make this, all right? You cannot make this in a non-certified kitchen and sell it. That's not how food works. You've got to find a space. You've got to invest in a space where you can actually go make your product, all right? Do some experimenting in your kitchen, knock yourself out. You can't sell that product unless somebody from your county or town, or not usually town, I suppose, county or state has come in and inspected your kitchen. All right, so know what your recipe is, and friends, commit to the recipe. Do not be forever tinkering with your recipe. I know it's super easy to do. However, it is the primrose path to death and destruction. What do we do around here? We decide what we're going to do. We're going to write it down. We're going to do it. And then we self-coach when that didn't happen. When you refuse to commit to a recipe, you are refusing to decide what to do. That is quitting ahead of time, and it is not going to get you to your goal any faster. All right? So decide what you're going to do. Write it down and stick to it. Just stick to it. All right? You can add theme and variations after you get one thing down really, really well. Okay? So, recipe. Decide on your recipe. Use metric if possible. Weigh things out. That's how we do it in food manufacturing. Remember, you aren't cooking anymore. You're manufacturing, and you've got to transition your mindset. And one of the best places to transition your mindset is around your recipe. Okay? Then, once you have your recipe, I need you to think about your product itself, okay? Most people, when I ask what they make, they start telling me about their delicious food. That's nice, but it's not repeatable and scalable. When we start manufacturing, we start thinking about repeatable, scalable food, okay? So you need to define what size it is you're making, all right? If you're making loaves of bread, you need dimensions on that, because I promise your end customer is expecting the exact same size loaf of bread, by and large, every time they buy from you. And if they get a gigantic loaf of bread one day and a tiny loaf of bread the next day or next week or whatever, you don't look like a professional. You don't look like you know what you're doing, okay? So length, width, height of things, weight of things, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Get yourself a ruler, I mean, like, pretty good calipers, like my kids have them. You can buy them at Staples. Okay, measure your food. Figure out how much it weighs. If you're making cookies, you have to make them. Say you're making 100-gram cookies. You always have to make them in 100 grams or else you have no idea what you're actually selling. And there are ways that we do this in manufacturing, but if you're just starting out, get a scale. When I was teaching my kids how to make rolls, and they had some rolls that were like gigantic and some were tiny, we brought out a scale and we said 75 grams. Every roll has to be 75 grams. And you know what happened? We got rolls of even size that cooked evenly. Okay, that's why you need to know what your size is. Okay, next, shape. How are these things supposed to be shaped? Are they supposed to be a little ragged around the edges because you're going for that like home cooked look? Great, knock yourself out. Make sure you have the like equipment to make sure that can happen on a repeatable, scalable process. Okay, is it always rectangular? Is it always square? Is it always a circle? Is it, you know, like, what sort of stuff is it going in that helps it retain its shape? So if you're making pie, you're probably selling your pie in a pie shell. You got to know that, and that is part of what do you make, because you make a product that must be delivered in a pie shell. Okay. Next, I'm going to teach you one of my favorite words. It's called organoleptic. All right, organoleptic is our 5 senses. So when we look at your food, the organoleptics are how it looks, how it smells, how it tastes, how it sounds, and how it feels. Okay, and all of those things are important because your customer buys with their eyes. All right, so it has to look amazing, okay? It has to have a good mouthfeel to them. And you have to understand how the mouthfeel interacts with how they're smelling it, all right? You need to be able to understand that your product sounds a certain way. And I know that sounds really, really weird, but you know how you knock your bread to make sure it sounds hollow to know that it's cooked? Well, believe it or not, most things have a sound. And I know it sounds really strange, but get used to, you probably know it without even thinking about it. You probably know how your product is supposed to look and smell and taste and feel, but really get granular and make your product and spend some time with the organoleptics and really write that down. If it's supposed to be a certain color when it's cooked, get yourself a color chart and make sure that it's always that color when it's cooked. All right, this is what a lot of food labs do, is they make sure the color is what it's supposed to be. I mean, Kraft macaroni and cheese does not get to be that nuclear orange on accident, all right? They planned that. You can do the same thing. I guess my request would be maybe not nuclear orange if you're not actually like making cupcakes or something, okay? So get really familiar with your organoleptics so that you can really know that you've made what you said you were going to make, because that's going to become super important down the line. All right, and then finally, what you need to think about is your packaging. So remember that pie shell that I talked about? Well, that pie shell is your primary packaging, okay? Primary packaging touches the food. Primary packaging includes your labels. So now is the time to understand what has to go on your labels, what you're doing about allergens and allergen control, and how that works with your label. DM us if you have questions, okay? Next thing is your secondary packaging. So your secondary packaging is like your master casing. So let's take our pie example. So you have a pie, your pie has a pie shell, that's primary packaging. You put a cover on that pie, all right? Also like a plastic cover, that's also primary packaging, or you're shrink wrapping it. That is primary packaging, okay? Then you stick it in a sleeve that has your label on it. Now, if you're going after an SQF audit eventually, I promise you, your SQF auditor considers that primary packaging. As you are starting out, that sleeve with all your labeling in it is secondary packaging. That's totally okay. That's what everybody likes to design, all that sort of stuff, make it beautiful. All right, and then in this pie example, when you take it and you put it in a case, that is what we call tertiary packaging. All right, know all of those different kinds of packaging, because you are not handing your customer, especially if you're getting into wholesale and scaling up, you're not really handing your customer a naked pie, right? You're not just handing them a loaf of bread with nothing on it. You're handing them a loaf of bread in a bag with a label on it. All of that stuff all of that packaging, that is where your customer is going to decide whether or not they're going to buy your product, because they have to be able to store your product. So if you are trying to get into distribution, right, eventually you have to design your packaging so that it's easy for your distributor. If you want to know more about how to solve those customer problems, that is what we are here for, okay? We are all about building wealth and community. And I want you to go to www.sfbdi.com/onebigresult, and you can download the handout totally free on how we teach people how to start solving their customer problems. Because I promise, if you do that first and this second, you will have a successful, profitable, wealth-creating, community-creating food business. And that's what we're all about here. Everybody have an awesome day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.